not for the faint of heart. By Krishna's mercy. Bahunam janmanam ante, jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvam iti, samahatma sudurlabha. Quote, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Lord Krishna, Bhagavad-gita 7:19.
Do you have any idea how difficult the last few years have been for some of us? No, I have been perfectly healthy. Thanks for asking. There were no colds or extended illnesses. What to speak of stints at the hospital? I did not take any precautions either. I did not change anything, in fact. I utilized the same common sense that I always have. The knowledge base is always growing based on observation and experience. I try to keep an open mind about things. But it appears that anyone who has common sense these days becomes a target. They are accused of being oppressive, offensive, and selfish. They are supposedly indifferent or callous to the concerns of the marginalized, the victimized, and the perpetually offended. For me, it is beginning to be too much to take. It is difficult to have a conversation anymore. I am serious. As soon as I point out an obvious flaw highlighting the madness that the entire population has seemingly accepted, I get accused of all sorts of things. I am supposedly a follower of this political figure. I must be getting my news from some cable channel. Or perhaps I am an avid listener to some rebellious podcast host. In fact, I am none of those things. I don't really care about politics. I don't watch the news, cable or otherwise. I simply notice the hypocrisy, the cheating, and the nonsense put forth by people of authority. I know that 2 + 2 = 4. When you point out the obvious nowadays, you tend to stand out. What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to take up the science of self-realization when simply trying to live a normal life is now considered offensive? How are we supposed to withstand the scrutiny? It is not easy being rebellious. It is not in my nature. Some of us really just want to get along. But I refuse to give in to madness simply to have friends.
The ordeal described above is akin to having your eyes opened. You finally see clearly. You realize that the people society considers intelligent are really not worthy of the designation. There is a kind of self-scratching of backs. A society of mutual admirers. I review your scientific paper so that you will later give the stamp of approval for mine. Never mind what the actual science is. Pay no attention to the many flaws in my premise. We are credentialed scientists, you see, and so no one can put us down. The science of self-realization is like having your eyes open to the entire world, not limited to discussions on public policy, well beyond hot-button issues related to politics, more than science, nature, the environment, and the grievances of the different demographic groups. The science of self-realization is realizing yourself. You finally see who you truly are. Not necessarily the image reflected by the mirror, not the title that hangs outside the door at the office, not the endearing name used by the spouse or the children at home. The science of self-realization targets the true identity of the individual. We are all spirit soul. We have somehow landed in this place, which is miserable and temporary. We cannot see ourselves because of this all-pervading energy of illusion. That energy is known as Maya. Hum lakhi lakhi hamara lakhi, hum hamar ke beech. Tulsi alakhi ka lakhi Ram naam jap neech. Quote, O mystic, first know yourself, then realize the supreme absolute truth, and then see the material nature standing in between. O wretch, without seeing these, how can you understand what the unmanifested invisible feature of the absolute truth Allah actually is? Chant Sri Rama's holy name instead, says Tulsi. Dohavali 19. That illusion stands in the way of my realizing the Brahman identity that I have always had and will continue to maintain in the future. No other science or field of study deals with this fine-grained specification pertaining to the identity of the individual. As His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada would say, outside of the pursuit towards perfection in Krishna consciousness, everyone is essentially crazy. Quote, Krishna says that material nature, which controls both kinds of entities, is acting under his direction. There is a supreme control. Modern civilization does not understand this due to lack of knowledge, so our Krishna consciousness movement is trying to enlighten people. People are all crazy because they are conducted by the influence of the three modes of material nature. They are not in their normal condition. Srila Prabhupada, Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure. Anyone who attempts to understand their true identity will stand out in this world. Sri Krishna confirms this in Bhagavad-gita. After countless births, a person can finally reach an ideal understanding of the Supreme Lord. To reach such an understanding is rare. If we are in a rare position, it also means we will be in an isolated position. There is simply no way around the reality. Srimati Radharani sarcastically recommends against serving Sri Krishna in a mood of love. Simply from hearing about his glories, a person will be drawn towards transcendence. The result of that decision is that they will likely lose their friends, family, and standing in society. Quote, in my opinion, Srimati Radharani continued, one should not hear about Krishna, because as soon as a drop of the nectar of his transcendental activities is poured into the ear, one immediately rises above the platform of duality, attraction, and rejection. Being completely freed from the attraction of material attachment, one gives up the attachment for this material world, family, home, wife, children, and everything which is materially dear to every person. Being dispossessed of all material acquisition, one makes his relatives and himself unhappy. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vol 1, ch. 46. If after accepting these warnings a person still proceeds, continuing in their service to the origin of matter and spirit, then it must mean that something wonderful is on the other side. To finally realize the madness that is material living is to receive a great benediction. It is a gift that should not be tossed aside out of a feeling of embarrassment or fear of isolation. In closing, if serving with determination, likely then isolation, because rare position found, to transcendence bound, such that others as crazy to see, but steady whether or not to agree, because finally from knowledge true, that Krishna, the cause of causes, who